One of the funny things that I feel like has happened with AI over the last couple of years has been everybody kind of got into this with like ChatGPT in 2023 and that saying like, oh, well, yeah, you just need to do this one thing. You have this one tool and it does all the stuff and you don't have to do any more customization. People have slowly figured out that, something that is that general is never going to be that successful in
Absolutely.
actually getting things done. And it's kind of swung back the other direction where, well, what we need is way more, tooling that can do more specific things. And then the AI can truly be something you can leverage.
Yeah, the amount of setup.
Yep.
All right.
All
You
right.
guys ready to go? All right. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heynen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of AI for Advisors with myself, Mark Heynen, and James Cantwell. James, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark, as always. How you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Really excited today to have Alex Schlesinger with us. Now, Alex comes to us from Advent, SS&C Advent, to be clear. He leads AI product strategy. And I'm really excited about this one because we've had a lot of people on who have been building startups in this space or just generally observing the space, or in some cases, running independent financial advisors in the space. But here now we have someone actually building from the inside, building AI, which reminds me a little bit. We had Reed on, who shares lineage,
colleague.
obviously, with Advent. So, we had this concept of pirate versus Navy. So we've interviewed a lot of pirates. Now we're actually interviewing the Navy, and we may have like an ex-pirate in the Navy here. And so, yeah, really excited. And I would say that AI and wealth management in general has been dominated by startup stories. Your prospecting tools, your email drafters, your note takers, and, advisors and investment managers live in these platforms built by incumbents for the most part. They probably spent more time in terms of hours of the day in S&C, Fiserv, FIS, Broadridge, et cetera. And so the question is, what's going to happen? How is AI being shipped by those companies? And often, maybe it doesn't make headlines, but there are really significant things going on. I will say I actually did speak with a few larger firms recently who were building AI initiatives, and I was really amazed at the ambition of what they were doing and how little they were talking about it, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Also, James, I am conscious you spent some time at Advent. Do you want to trash talk your former employer before we get started?
I probably won't be doing any of that because Advent was probably like the most fun time I've ever had. I mean, I do have some questions for later, but like as far as companies go, I had an absolute blast working there and made some lifelong friends. So it's got a soft spot in here. But Alex, welcome
Thank
to
you.
the podcast.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. I mean, let's start with just hearing your story. How did you basically come into AI via your, sort of career path? Would love to hear a little more about Eze and how you actually came through.
Did you say Eze?
Actually,
Yeah,
what is the correct pronunciation?
As it's one of those things. When because back in the day I was hired into the ES organization, and when you would do interviews, when you'd interview people, the number one question, like you get done and you'd be talking with people afterwards, and everyone would just go, "So how'd they say the name? Was it Ease? Was it Ez? Was it Easy?" And you just get this. It's kind of like the what's the name on the coffee cup sort of thing. Like when you have a name that can be spelled a couple different ways. Like, did you get the CH? Do you get the K? Do you get the so on? So, the way that one pronounces as, that's always a trip up. But calling my career a path is a bit generous to make it seem like that there was any kind of one direction. It was my career has been less of a ladder and more of a climbing wall, where it's I'm just going to keep torturing metaphors, so just bear with me. But I've taken a path where I have been put in the opportunities and put myself in opportunities to work in a lot of different areas of tech. So I started my career actually in web hosting and things like that, and I got to the point of building products and deploying medical technologies at the U.S. Air Force in Europe and Walter Reed, to helping build things for casinos until I ended up at as 8 years ago. So I'm not someone that has spent my entire career in fintech, although at this point it's been a majority of it. But I arrived as in this role of associate director of technical communications. So I was working with teams that were writing about the things that we were doing. But as I said, I've never been someone that just kind of sits back and goes, "Oh, I'm just going to stay in my lane." I'm very, very bad at staying in a lane. That's just not who I am as a person. I see problems and I like solving it. So
I'm going to interrupt.
over
I
time,
never thought about myself like that, but that's really accurate. I don't like to stay in my lane.
Lanes
It's
are
a great
boring.
I'm right there
description.
with you guys. I'm right there with you guys, and I have real trouble with large organizations. So I'm impressed you're able to survive in a large organization and thrive, Alex, because I found as soon as a company reaches 10,000, things become an order of magnitude more difficult for me. And yeah, that's been my situation in the past, where in my previous company,
9,000 employees is really my sweet spot.
Yeah,
It's that last 1,000 that really does
this last
it for me.
1,000 is horrible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the
those
Leonardo
people.
DiCaprio approach to employment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a testament to I think a bit of just the culture that particularly just that and I was able to carry forward, and I think that was there at Advent, that it allows for these kind of pockets to exist where you can step outside of what your job description is and do it. And I think they talk a lot, or it's talked a lot about in startup culture, about like, you wear the different hats and so on, but it exists. I mean, that's businesses, I think, at this point anyway, which is in a large organization, you can sit there with your one hat on, or you can go find as many as you want. I think there is probably a certain size company where they will shut that down. Fortunately, I'm not in one of those. I'm either not in one of those places, or I've done such a bad job in listening to people who told me to stay in my lane that it just hasn't mattered. But
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, but I think you're hitting on like a really important point here, which is a lot of the successful AI teams I've been talking to within large organizations seem to have a fair amount of independence. And so
Yeah.
I guess the one I can talk about publicly is the Orion one, because they've been on the record quite a bit about this. But I mean, the fact that Reed took some of his old colleagues from Florida, they basically set them up in a separate location, made sure they had full API access to the core Orion functionality, so they didn't actually have to have a lot of technical architecture meetings with the mothership, and they could just build. And I guess he had the credibility to just get the management to just say, go build and let us know when you're ready to launch. I feel like that's the way it should run, because anything outside of that will just take a long time, and probably just take way longer than a startup just who's grinding a lot faster.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the whole theme. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I was gonna say it's one of those. It's a very kind of classic debate of how do you want to manage innovation? Do you want innovation to come this top down by diktat, or do you want this to grow out of grassroots? And I feel like a lot of times you get a lot of success in the middle ground, which is rare. Sometimes, a lot of times, middle ground is just lack of decision making. But you need this top down kind of enablement for this sort of stuff to happen. But you need people who are passionate about the thing. So in my case, it was at the end of 23, kind of looking at where we were in the AI space. And I was finishing up my MBA, and I was looking at it, and when you're in those classes and things, your mind is just constantly going. I was like, well, what are we doing with this? I spun up my own private GPT. I started loading things in, because the last thing I wanted to do was, endanger any data or anything that we're working with. My background, especially in the work that I did with the DoD and doing all those certifications, was keep the data safe. So I learned everything that I could learn by just setting it up on my own, and that's where it went. And I just started lobbying and pitching. And there was fortunately this environment that, there's caution, because there always is. That's where it is in the big organization. But I guess to go back to the previous point, I ignore being told to stay in the lane. Nobody told me to stay in my lane at any point, but I had to build the case, and we built the case, and that was it. And we were able to say, and they said, okay, form this team, start working on it, and we have measurable success, and it's only going up from there.
So I'm really kind of curious. I mean, this is where, I don't know, maybe my background being at Advent for nearly a decade, right? Like, and I've been gone for over a decade now, so a lot has changed. but at least when I was there, a lot of the applications were, on-prem software locally installed. Per client instance, there was some products that were already moving to be more cloud-based. There's a lot of products that were still kind of on-prem but hosted. So you had like the Advent outsourcing services, and a lot of products didn't share a centralized data source. They each had their own independent databases and they integrated. So that seems like a really massive challenge to overcome. So obviously I'm describing something that may or may not be true anymore, but it's how it was, 10 plus years ago. Is that still something that you've had to overcome? And like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's this kind of where are we as a legacy company? Where are we with these products? As you said, we have on-prem, we have cloud, we have this. How do you reconcile all that together? And I think before AI, that was actually a really hard question to answer, because it's, well, how do you get into these databases? How do you establish a lot of these connections? And the first step in working that out was to build APIs. And so in Advent, as APIs were built, and now with the dawn of MCP and the agentic workflows and this real push to move data around a lot more efficiently, well, now we've got an advantage because we had the resources to build all of this key infrastructure. And now it's a matter of, well, if something is running on-prem, we need to establish a connection to it. So it's less of what's this distinct connection over here and how do we distill out the database? It's, well, you're running a system that has an API that we can connect to. All we have to do is get to it. And with the way that we're setting up our AI platform, it's not a matter of everybody is using the same pool of information. I can connect to your, provided that the firewall allows for it, we can connect to that, pull in that context via MCP, and spinning up MCP servers has never been easier. So we actually are able to leverage our position and kind of bridge that gap between the on-prem and the cloud.
That's really interesting. How do you think of, when you're doing that work, I mean, that sounds a lot of internal engineering. How do you think of sourcing technology from vendors, fast-moving startups there who are basically trying to license you software either on a SaaS or on-prem basis versus building everything from scratch internally with your engineering team?
So we've taken an approach, I believe, that flexibility is our biggest advantage. I think there's a lot of, especially in the startup space, I understand the benefits of doing a really strong partnership with someone like OpenAI, where you're able to leverage all the infrastructure and tooling that they have. But the downside is that they are paving the road that you're on. And I know I've been just really overusing road-based metaphors, but let's keep going.
Great.
If you do that, every client has to drive the same path. And I think that if we do that, if we force everybody down the exact same road, the best thing we can do is make everybody the same level of mediocre. And nobody wants that. So what we've done is looked at it and said, okay, how do we leverage the best part of tools, but be pragmatic enough that we're not building everything from scratch? So in terms of models, we're not building our own models. There's the foundation models do everything that we could ask for, but not every foundation model does the same thing. So is a use case better suited to something like Sonnet, where that processing is an advantage? Or if we're doing something with orchestration, are we better off using a 7B, like a Llama 7B, where we are tightening the parameter set because we don't need to go kind of crazy, or something from there, where we just wouldn't have that flexibility if we just stuck with one provider. It would be just a little bit more difficult.
But go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, I think Mark might have been asking more, not necessarily about like the major LLM providers, but other tech partners who are already building some AI solutions to kind of accelerate or to complement.
Yeah, on the orchestration or the application layer, right? That's where the rubber really hits the road, and that's where there's a lot more innovation. Because I wouldn't even call Anthropic and OpenAI startups anymore, right? I think they're like utility companies at this point, right? Like they're
absolutely
providing like utilities. You want to be agnostic, you might use Bedrock or something, so you can be agnostic. And so really the question is, I guess really the question is, what is your overarching objective? That's maybe a really interesting high level question. Like, is your mandate
the same thing? Like, what's the goal of this group?
Is your mandate to drive adoption? And it doesn't matter how efficient it is because you guys are just in learning mode? Is it really to more effectiveness and higher AUM? Like what is the mandate? What does success look like for you?
Success for us is the number of use cases and the amount of operational impact. So if we're able to provide strong operational efficiency with the tooling that we can offer somebody, that's success. And if that's one client that has an incredible percentage of it, that's a great result. If it's a number of clients that have it, obviously we want everybody to be using every tool, but it's being able to provide operational impact. We are going to learn no matter what along the way. We are going to learn. And we've spent 2025 doing a lot of learning, and 2026 is the putting it out there and getting this going.
And is impact defined in any particular way, or at this point it's just utilization changes and workflows is good enough?
I'm sorry?
Oh, like when you say something that's high impact, is it like being tied to like higher AUM or more number of clients per user, or like is there any way that's defined?
The definition really, I think, has to do with our individual clients. So are they, I mean, if they get higher AUM, great, but I don't think that's not necessarily the AI tooling that we're building, because we're not building tools that make the decisions that necessarily says, okay, well, we're going to take this asset, we're going to do this. But It's the sort of things that have we made it so that the staffing that they have can do more? Can they make, I mean, I guess it's where the AUM goes up is, can they make better decisions? Can we provide them reporting that lets them do that? And can they use the tool sets that they have, or if they're making migrations, can they save money as they're migrating from other tools onto us? I think those are the kind of things that we're looking at and saying, yeah, this is a place where AI may not have the flashiest impact, but it can absolutely have a great impact on what people are doing.
So with the products that you have, right, and the ecosystem we described, where there is a lot of different products at SS&C Advent, and what's kind of, I don't want to say completely unique, but one of the things is like many of those products can be used independently of one another.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that sort of setup, I mean, is there some overarching desire, either short term or long term, to start to consolidate them onto something different or new? Or is the goal really to just make these products work better with one another, to just be more unified?
I think there's this viewpoint that we have. I hold it very strongly, and it permeated through, is it would be wonderful if we could always get everybody onto the same tool. I mean, that would be just dandy, where all we got to do is support one thing, and we migrate everybody onto one tool. Boy, that would be amazing. But that's not going to happen. So when we set out to build our AI platform, the idea from the outset was, okay, we have to start in one product, but how do we make sure that we can connect in other products as well? So if you're on APX, if you're on OMS, if you're on any of these other products, how can we get all this information to one place? And that's the viewpoint that we're looking at, is how can you pull all this in? And actually, to go to your previous question about, kind of startups and things like that, and what are the toolings that they can offer? Well, since we're doing stuff like building off of MCP, we've already talked with some startups and smaller companies, say, well, look, if you're building MCP tooling, we can just work direct integration, because, we're focused on, or I guess we have a central team that's focused on building this platform, because that is a ton of work in and of itself. And we've got product teams focusing on their parts as well. But we have to accept that there are going to be other companies that are going to focus on really hyper-specific problems, that they are problems they need solving. We are just not going to do it. That's a reality. So why would we fight against them? Let's integrate them. Let's make that something that we can take advantage of, that maybe our competitors aren't able to integrate those tools in as easily as we are, because we're thinking of that right from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like that's sort of on the infrastructure layer rather than the front end layer. I mean, if I understand, tell me if I'm reading this right. You obviously, you have a portfolio that spans hedge fund, OMS, wealth management reporting,
Mm-hmm.
portfolio accounting, compliance. And if I understand correctly, you're sort of building a AI layer that those products can plug into and possibly share data
Mm-hmm.
across each other. So there's compatibility, but the end user doesn't have to learn to use a brand new front end. There's no Advent AI new application that they have to sort of like the Copilot equivalent for Advent would be like, hey, now you get to license this new application. You're sort of, if I understand correctly, you're sort of building, you're up leveling the AI capabilities of each of those applications, and you're probably thinking through use cases, but their use cases are so disparate, right? So what makes like a good use case or a bad use case for AI
So
in your?
well, I'll step to answering that in a second, but just to kind of step back, we have kind of a hybrid approach. So we definitely don't want to say like, all right, congratulations, you have something new you have to use. That's not good. What we are doing is there are workflows that we just recognize that like AI is going to assist. So something like operations, reconciliation, that's a place where AI can have a big impact, but you don't need to type into a chatbot to say, perform my reconciliation. But no, just click the button. It'll handle the resolution. It can write in, it can write in the reasoning. It can work out what the breaks are based on ML models, plus sending it through some large language models to build the explanation. But there is a use case for, that ultimately that same AI or that same platform where, yeah, you want to have a discussion, so to speak. You wanted to use it for building reports, doing research, and that does require some type of interface. And we do want that built directly into our product. So that's there. So a good use case versus a bad use case. One of the things I talk about a lot is the mistake that firms and companies make by taking what I call the solution first approach. And it happens with AI a lot, where companies, they think AI, they hear AI. All right, we're going to solve a problem with AI. And then what they do is they scour every part of their firm for a problem that fits into a gap called AI. And meanwhile, real operational problems are happening. And those are just getting ignored because they don't see how they can fit it into a ChatGPT window. They want something that fits into this neat AI box, and they ignore it. And then they wonder why their AI implementations failed because, well, your real problems overtook the one that you were trying to solve. It didn't really solve anything. So for me, really solid use
I feel
cases
like this is this hammer looking for a nail problem. I feel like that was like the fundamental root cause of that 95% number that was bandied around last year, right? It just feels like a likely culprit.
Yeah, I tell people I like to work on cars, and I've got a torque wrench in my basement or in my garage, and I don't walk around the house looking for things to do with it. It's fancy, it's nice, it does the job it's supposed to do. When I have to take a tire on or off, or change the steering wheel, which happens a bit more than you'd think, but I'm not when I had to mount the camera into my daughter's nursery, I didn't go, well, maybe if I get a bolt, I can torque it in. Just get a screwdriver and put it in the wall. And that's the problems that companies are doing, is that they go, all right, well, we're going to get this. We're getting ChatGPT. We're getting Anthropic. Let's find a problem. It's when they say the words, let's find a problem this can solve. You're done. You've already put one foot in the coffin, because you are trying to determine the path you're taking because of a solution you want, not the other way around.
Yeah. That's incredibly common. I mean, and it's not even new. I think it just got worse and accelerated with AI. This was just such a, this just did such a J curve that, everybody's asking those questions. And, I've said this on the show before, like probably the number one inbound sort of like request I get with Wealth Tech Select is like, how can you help me implement AI into my business? And I'm always like, to solve what? And they're like, well, we're just worried we're falling behind. There's a lot going on with AI, and like, we don't want to miss out. I'm like, okay, I can help you, but we're gonna have to start in a different place than where you want to.
Yeah, and I've had people, when they've talked to me, because they see my title and background, and they say, "Oh, what are the problems we can solve with AI?" I said, "But what are the problems that you're experiencing?" And they'll tell me, and I go, you don't have to solve it with AI. You could pick, if those are the biggest problems, you can pick some other solutions. And here's some things to look at first. And it'll surprise them. One, I think, because they expect, I think, a lot of people who are in AI positions to just be trying to sell the AI. But two, they kind of realize that, oh, actually, I was really just wanted an AI solution.
Yeah.
I didn't really think of these other ways to solve the problems instead.
Well, to Mark's point, right? Like at this point, and I know he was referring to like the major model providers, but like they are more of like a utility. They're more of
Yeah.
a tool. They are not a solution in and of themselves. They are
No.
not a product. I mean, they are technically a product, but not in the way we're talking right now. They're
Right.
not a product in and of themselves that you would put into an organization. They're something that most vendors like yourself and pretty much everybody else we have on the show is using as a tool inside of their product. And the
Absolutely.
products solve real problems, and that's like really that's where you focus
Yeah.
is on
Well,
those
I'm
problems.
curious, like when you think through those use cases, what are the classes of problems you find are more suitable? Like where are you allocating your time and treasure?
So a lot of the things that we're looking at is, and I'll offer a bit of this. The work I'm primarily focused on is a lot of the infrastructure to make all of these use cases happen, because I acknowledge that I don't have the information on every little use case, but we've got these incredible product teams that do, and our clients, you know, they know their problems better than I could possibly guess at. So what we're doing is building tooling that we can hand to them and say, here's an easy path to solve problems. See if your problems fit into this, and you can start building agents, toolkits, whatever, to do that. So just to put that out there, some of the things that really drew our attention when we were starting to build this were, again, these operational sides of things where you have a lot of repeated, repetitive action, or very small, very small adjustments. So again, reconciliation, big one. If you're building reporting, one of the things that we would hear about is like analysts who would have to build reports every quarter or every month or whatever it is. And these reports are almost exactly the same every time. The numbers change slightly, but the commentary does need to adjust a bit. So AI would be really well suited. Pulls out the accounting data, puts it in. It can try to build out some type of attribution analysis into there but the key thing that we always put in there is that a human needs to review this. So we have to build these workflows where somebody isn't just writing it, it directly sends off that an analyst then can read it later. But if we can get AI to cover 80 to 90% of the work and leave it to a review cycle, that's a big benefit. And we just have it drop into a template that's predefined. I think on the kind of the analysis side of it, where we're able to pull in a lot of data and have AI very quickly and efficiently summarize and make the notation. So if you need to do some deeper investigation, that's a pretty key thing as well. I think one of the places that we are seeing development in AI features is in anything that requires real-time data. And that's been such a challenge up to this point, because you couldn't really load real-time data into...
You talking about
You
market
just
data
can't load
or
it.
any other?
Market data.
Okay.
So you can't load those into models, of course, but now we've got things, because we have these sorts of things like MCP, or you can get more streaming data in. Well, now how do we establish those connections? How can we take a bit more advantage of that? That said, as a product provider, something that I have to be cognizant of is, where are we going? How close are we getting to that line where we're making recommendations? And that's not a line I want to cross, we want to cross, because it goes back to one point earlier, which is, if we have AI just tell everybody what decisions to make, suddenly everybody is the same, and everybody has that kind of secret sauce, that thing that makes them different. So we don't want to change that. But two, then we become, there's a legal aspect of it that we just need to be very careful of, and we want to make sure we're on the correct line of that.
So I have a question going kind of a slightly different direction, which is, and I'll preface this a little bit, like with some of the smaller startups, right? AI is playing a big role in the entire organization, from business planning to marketing to writing code to whatever. It seems to be something that like these firms are kind of just adopting at their core. When you're a firm that's been operating, at least under the Advent umbrella prior to SS&C since 1983, and you have tens of thousands of employees, that's got to be a little bit different. So the question is like, how has just AI in general changed the landscape at SS&C Advent? Where are the areas where it's really being used, and do you see some opportunities for some material change or ways for it to kind of move the organization faster?
Within the organization itself, we've had really great adoption on the engineering side. So there are places where there's kind of the standard engineering stuff, like, oh, well, it can kind of clean up code in little pockets here and there. But we've seen it in some of our products where we can experiment and try new things so much faster. So if we were doing something like looking at the EMS, the Realtic product, we can do some experiments on, well, what if we want to change the front end to do this versus that? And you can spin up those experiments so much faster, so you can do proof of concepts much more quickly. Now, I think to anybody who hasn't worked in it, that doesn't really translate to much. Like, great, you can do some trial and error faster, but trying to do, if I want to do a full front end proof of concept, just to see if a layout would work correctly, or if a concept of the way that you would interact with it, that could take months. You could have a big development cycle on that.
Yeah.
Now you can do that in like a week, and you can figure out is that a path that we want to pursue. And to me, that is just an enormous value add. It means that we can innovate, and we can test our innovations and our ideas so much faster than before. And especially when we're in a space where people ask the question of like, what's the next thing you're bringing me? Well, we need to work out if that's something we want to invest and spend our time in, and we can make that determination that much faster.
Yeah. Are clients seeing, like, I realize you're building in, like you mentioned, reconciliation earlier, but like, I'm actually give you a use case that like I did for a client. So I used to do a lot of like Advent consulting. I don't do quite as much these days, but I had an existing client, an Axis client, for those that know the Axis application, and they needed some scripting done. And I was a little rusty, but I grabbed some sample scripts. I grabbed some information from the help file, and I plugged it in, and I used it to write a bunch of scripts and optimize a bunch of scripts relatively quickly. Right. So like, that was a long time ago. I mean, that was probably a year and a half ago at this point, a long time in AI terms. But like, are things like that where, clients are building their own stuff, right? Because Advent always had that extensibility to like let you kind of build what you want, custom reports, etc. Have you guys gone down that direction, providing some tools to like, the power users?
Yeah, that's a key part of us building the platform, is that we want to enable people to take advantage of this flexible platform that we've built. It's not, yes, there is of course guardrails and protections and certain things that will allow people to do and certain things that we won't. But we've just wrapped up a work on an SDK that we're tooling and working that on the inside. But the intention is that if there are firms that, they want to take advantage of their ability to do things, to build custom agents and do that, we want to enable them. We want people to look at the AI that we've built and say, well, you know what? We can't get this if we just buy something off the shelf. We want this thing that has been built specifically, for these tools in mind, or for the the Advent products that can integrate these other products.
Yeah, because at some point to me, like, you guys start to look closer to a Salesforce than some of these other smaller providers, right? Where it's like, let's give you the tools and let's have this ecosystem of builders and consultants and other things that kind of support this space, and we'll keep building the product and the tools, right? The architecture, and let everybody. So like, I haven't really thought about this much in the past, but like, that's kind of the direction it sort of feels like, with the size that you're at, the number of platforms, like that sort of feels like potentially like where you guys could go. But historically, Advent was a little more closed off, and it sounds like that's changing.
Yeah, we are definitely, I think it's as an industry, being more closed off is a bit more de rigueur. That's the standard, I think, that we're used to. I would like to see, again, it's sort of flexibility with some safe limits. And I very much, I believe in my core that AI should be allowing people to do more custom work and do things that are more bespoke to them. We shouldn't just be having AI be a tool to make everybody the same, because that's to everyone's detriment. It should be a way that those who want to embrace it and use the tools can make themselves exceptional.
And I think that's internal and external, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm reminded that we interviewed Ken from Conquest, and he had mentioned that they decided just to make all of Conquest available via MCP. If someone wants to interact with their conquest planning data via Claude or another client totally fine,
Yeah.
and that I found that to be really interesting because he was providing a lot of options to the clients, right? Of course, same revenue. They're still clients and customers of Conquest, but now they can build more things on top of it. Of course, you're losing a little bit there in terms of control. And I guess it also, just to flip it around, it also means internally, the question is whether there's buy-in to AI generated prototypes as being viable. And I'm just curious actually whether it's actual prototypes, code written by AI, or even documents generated with AI. What is the internal perception right now at S&C? Is it because, I mean, on one extreme you have Claude or Anthropic, which basically had created 4 or 5 different versions of Dispatch, and tried them all before choosing which one to launch, which is like a very extreme way to run product. Right? It's like, we're just going to build everything
We're
on
not
our
going to do
roadmap,
that.
and we'll see what works, and then we'll decide which one to launch because we have such overabundance of resources, right? Like, imagine that happening at Advent. You're like, basically, you have 15 products that are actually being like tried internally, and then you decide which one to launch.
Yeah,
But
that would
I'm
be
just
great.
curious, what is the internal perception of AI generated code or content?
The internal perception, I think, is optimism with a healthy level of caution. Boy, what a statement that is. So it's this, we can build these things very, very quickly, but we understand that just because you produce something with AI does not mean it's production quality. It does not mean it's production ready. So nobody is under some could say foolish, some could say dangerous assumption that, oh, well, just because Claude pumped out this bit of code, or just because it came out of pick your favorite model, that this is something we can throw to production. It's, we can understand, we can look, we can have this tangible feel for what we think might work, what we think, use that to determine if we should spend the time and resources on it. So that's the dynamic. Is it's an amazing tool to speed up some small parts of the code checking, things like that, but also speed up our development in, is this something that we want to spend our time doing? And then if we decide we do, well, then it's taking the human expertise and building something that meets our standards for security and our standards for governance.
So I got something kind of changing directions again, which I feel like I keep saying like it every time, but I'll use a road analogy. We're at an intersection. So at this intersection, my question's this: in your more personal life, what's the number one AI tool that you're using, or what are you experimenting with AI-wise?
I think my favorite tool is Claude. I use Anthropic. I use Claude just about every day. I've got personal projects that I work on with it. I know that we were saying earlier that it's a utility, but I mean, it is the utility as far as I'm concerned. And it also comes out of an appreciation for what I think they are bringing to AI as a tooling in an industry. So, they are bringing forward, or they brought forward in November of 24 MCP. And I thought that was this really, and I'm sorry if we're going to instantly lose anybody that doesn't care about
We
the
talk about
technical
MCP
side of
almost
it.
every episode, by the way,
Yeah,
so no problem.
But it's, they brought out this standard that, it worked. I think the high watermark is that if you bring out a standard that's going to bring OpenAI and Google together into the same room and go, okay, I think that's a thing that we want to do, you've done something right.
Yeah.
And then they just recently did it with skills. And again, it's this, they keep bringing out very not just accessible things, but things that are just useful. And to me, maybe it's not the most glamorous, or it doesn't generate, all the buzz of something like OpenClaw or what have you, but the consistency in delivery out of Anthropic. It's not to say they don't have the things that they're working on, or I know that I think relatively recently they had some operational issues, but
like 500,000 lines of code leaking?
Yeah, or that.
I think I just got a text. It's my brother said it's crashed, like it's unusable at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, I think they're just shipping at such velocity, right? And they
Right.
are shipping mostly, AI coded stuff that it's just not going to have the reliability that they expect. But I would say good for them, because I think the feature set they ship is amazing. So I love their velocity. I also think it is a utility, but they're building an application on top of that.
Right.
The big question is, can they actually continue to have this reach right? The reach is incredible with the skills and with Claude Code and Claude Cowork. Their level of reach is really pretty phenomenal. And so, yeah, I'm wondering just whether they will be able to keep that up. They've definitely, here at least, I'm in the Bay Area, they've taken over the mind share of OpenAI pretty dramatically, right? And even people think it's pretty badass that they decided not to buy OpenClaw or acquihire OpenClaw and instead just decided to ship their own version of OpenClaw within 3 weeks, right? That's pretty badass. And so I think it just shows that they're pretty serious about this. Yeah. And so I'm just curious, actually, you said on your personal life. So tell us more about your personal vibe coding projects. What do you got going on?
So my second daughter was born relatively recently. So what else do you have to do while you're trying to rock a baby to sleep, but spend some time coding? So I spent a lot of that time actually writing a video game, just
awesome,
all through using Claude and Opus. And yeah, I mean, I built it out pretty much from just kind of a rough idea that I had in my head from playing some games to entertain myself while being up at 2 a.m. to a very near code complete going into testing in, I don't know, about 8 weeks.
Wow.
And I mean, that's just the power of, and this kind of goes back to how does somebody who's had a weird kind of career like I have end up in AI and end up so deeply in it. And that's, I came into a lot of this on communications. That was my undergrad degree was in communications. I spent a lot of time writing, whether that was technical writing, whether that was technical specification writing, which, kind of dovetails into a lot of product development. But because I understood what you needed to do to write something like specifications and how, if you know how to write technical specifications, you actually probably know how to tell an AI how to code something really, really easily. And
that is the skill.
And that's the trick of it. And when I would work on it, people would go like, well, how do you deal with it when it does something you're not expecting? Well, how do you deal with an engineer when they do something you're not expecting? You tell it not to do that. You give it more clear instructions and you move right along.
Absolutely. And do you want to share this game? Is it public for other people to play?
It's not public. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I know some of my hobby apps have never made it out the door. I got one cleared for the Apple Store and then just never put it out there. I don't care to support it.
there's always hoops. There's always hoops. And then yes, it's the, oh God, yeah, you put this out there, then you have to actually back it. And you have to
yeah, I was like, no, I don't want to back it.
Yeah. You don't want to contribute to the slop.
Yeah. That's true. You have to basically put it out there and then support it and support people trying to use it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A company that people talk about a lot here is Pulsea. It's basically AI slop spelled backwards. And it's basically a marketplace for solopreneurs. It'll basically run your entire back end for your company using AI agents. And you just have to come with the idea and they'll take a revenue share and basically help you scale it up.
Wow.
And so they have just had incredible success. They, I think, deal mostly with running your AdWords campaigns, running your back-end operations, setting everything up for you. And so their principle is that the classic business co-founder who just has an idea but wants to basically have a partner running everything, it'll basically do that for you. And I mean, it reminds me of that idea we had, before we started really getting going of renting baby equipment, right? It's like a classic idea that a solopreneur might be able to do right now. There's another thing I saw recently where there's a solopreneur who actually did about 1.6 billion in sales for a GLP-1 drug of a business he started on his own, just using AI on the back end. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really fascinating. And they also have AI agents that help you brainstorm business ideas, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting to see where this goes. I could see it really, I mean, these passion projects could end up taking interesting directions.
Have either of you checked out Paperclip?
Yeah, so I would say that's in a similar vein.
Yeah, I've only looked a little bit at it. I haven't gone too deep into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna install it. I kind of want to I'm curious about it. I've watched some demos of it and stuff and seen completely polarizing reviews of it. Like some people being like, this is so amazing. Then other people picking it apart, being like, nobody's building anything useful with this thing.
Can you just brief our viewers and listeners of what it would do?
Yeah, so Paperclip, and thanks for that, Mark. Yeah, so Paperclip is meant to be, I think they call it the AI for zero human companies, even though that's really not who's using them. But It was created by this guy like Datto, who, by the way, when he does interviews, does it as his avatar. He doesn't actually show his face. So he's got like this red fro. Anyway, he's an interesting guy. But the platform itself is kind of like, you can almost think of it, they set it up kind of like where like you run a company and you hire different agents or even let agents hire different agents, and they kind of build themselves, and you essentially run them from like a board perspective. Like, here's your goal, here's what you should do, and they go develop a marketing plan and a go-to-market strategy and build the sales pipeline and whatever else. And so it's kind of meant where like they spin up new agents under the hood, and you can sort of bring your own agents. You could plug OpenClaw into it. I was looking to see if like I could plug Woodhouse into it, my AI employee. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious like how it works, and it's open source. So, other than, your regular API keys and your, pay per use API cost, that's it. So I think it's worth tinkering with. It has my attention.
Are there any successful companies on there? Like
I
anybody
haven't
who's
heard of
gotten
anything yet, but like,
yeah,
I will say, like, you hear people claim they're doing cool stuff with OpenClaw.
yes. Well, revenue generating, I don't know, but actually, there are some examples I've heard of people saving a lot of money with OpenClaw, right? Like using it as an AI employee, like effectively using it as an SDR, like an empowered SDR.
Yeah.
And I think actually, like, maybe that's where things start, is you basically can find you're replacing certain parts of your workflows, and it's an immediate benefit there. I think the
If you're
revenue
doing mass
generating
market
side,
lead gen, these sort of tools are fantastic.
yes, but then can it actually close business, right? I guess this is a fundamental question.
That's why I said mass market lead gen. There's a whole difference
Yeah, the big difference there,
between
right?
lead gen and closing business.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you want to just sell a lead gen platform and you use these tools to, as that. But
I find
anyway.
just, even just the personal sort of things you build. Like I built within my OpenClaw sort of environment, I built just an agent that keeps track of my kids' homework. They're in middle school and high school, and there's just a lot of homework right now, a lot to keep track of. And there are like 3 or 4 different interfaces to log into to see what's going on. Of course, it's all online. So you can basically have an agent every day look through and then send an email saying, hey, here's what's happened. Congratulations on this test. And here's what you got to focus on this afternoon. And I mean, that's great, because usually it's the parents trying to get on their kid's case. And of course, the kids don't want their parents to like be getting on their case.
So you've outsourced that to AI?
I've totally outsourced like my parental oversight.
Yeah.
That's my mission.
Well, kind of like Snoo with rocking the baby to sleep.
Exactly.
I
Look,
don't know if that was pre-show, so that may not end up in here, but the bassinet that, rocks the baby when the baby cries.
And the key thing is that kids now will develop the ability to get around having their parents have it. They'll get more creative. That's the effect of it. It's only good enough and useful enough until somebody finds a way around it, and thus the innovation continues.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, we're probably approaching time here. We've been asking a couple of questions. We kind of do this like rapid fire segment, and we've been asking a couple of questions lately. What is kind of the most overhyped AI use case product? You can kind of take it where you want. And what is the most underhyped? What are we missing? Where's the opportunity that people are sleeping on?
So I think overhyped, this is going to be a super broad answer, but I think the overhype isn't a specific product, but it's an attitude. And it's that attitude of, if I just AI will fix it. AI will fix it is just an overhyped and wrong approach, that if I just throw it at AI, it'll sort it out for me. I don't have to do any thinking. So to me, that is the overhype. And the underhype is the boring stuff. Again, it's you're not sure, you might be able to solve your flashiest problems with AI, but just think of all of the little things in life that annoy you, and as that stacks up, that's what becomes the problem. To actually kind of take it to the Snoo bassinet of if you have a baby and you put it in, and the Snoo can rock the kid to sleep. This isn't sponsored by them, by the way, but what's that cascade? You're welcome. But if you can kind of cut out that small problem, it cascades the rest of the day. So if you can take AI and you cut out a problem like, there's an operational problem where again, to go back to recon, if there are plenty of firms that let small amounts just cascade over time because it's just not worth their while to fix it. And that's just eventually going to cause a problem. Let AI solve that. You're not going to form, you're not going to lead in a presentation necessarily to anybody with that, but it's effective. That's a great way to use it. Or, again, just building these kind of reports, or even something as small as navigating through space. If I am in one part of an application, I'm talking to AI and I want it to move me to another, that's small, that's subtle, but that's not something you see a lot. And it's these kind of little use cases that's going to add up. You're going to gain a tenth of a second over time and so on. And maybe that's kind of betraying that I have a background and passion in motorsport where it's tenths of seconds, hundredths of seconds. That's what it builds up. Yeah. I mean, I'm such a huge F1 fan, but that's what it is. We're playing in tenths of seconds.
Yeah.
Grand Prix. Will Buxton. There you go. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think, but I mean, my take on that is when you make something a little bit easier and reduce a little bit of friction in a tool, it changes behavior pretty dramatically. Absolutely. And the classic situation when I was at Facebook that they changed the like button to something you just click in line versus have to confirm and increase usage by about 1,000%. So it's just insane, the difference. So I totally hear where you're coming from. So the stuff you've shipped, and I guess maybe would be great for you to share, like what have you shipped recently that people should look at? What's coming up that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't have things yet to quite talk about. I think I've given just about all of the preview and surface that I can before marketing rolls in and
no one listens to this. So you're okay.
I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to think some people are going to listen to this one. So I'll just say that we have some pretty exciting stuff in the pipeline, especially around on the platform side of things, and that I really do think that we're leveraging both orchestration. We're leveraging orchestration. We're leveraging agents. We're leveraging the ability to interconnect with systems within our own portfolio, our own product portfolio, and others in a way that's going to be really exciting to watch unfold over the next couple months.
But then to make it a little more, bring it back to some safer territory, is there something you've shipped in the last year or so that you're particularly proud of that people should check out if they're Advent customers?
You can definitely talk to us a bit more about the AI, but it's rolling out kind of progressively. So yeah, I mean,
coming soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And so if people do want to get in touch with you or learn more, where can they find you? Where can they go?
Yeah, they can definitely, very easy to find on LinkedIn, and you can see the comically long work history that I have in the very bizarre path it took me to get there. On there, you can also see some of the blogs and things I've written through Advent, some of the podcasts on there. And the Advent news and blog also definitely has a lot of that content as well.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex, so much for coming on the show. We enjoyed chatting with you. It's nice. I feel like we've started to build up the Navy, Mark. We're starting to get some more of these behemoths on the pod to talk to us about what they're doing and how they're moving forward with AI.
Yeah, we want more naval officers or even like defected pirates. We want more of them on the show. So if you're listening to this and you've made it all the way to the end, you either have a really long drive ahead of you or you're interested. And so if it's the latter, or even a former, get in touch. We definitely want to hear more.
We need a Navy and a pirate on the same episode is what we need.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, that'd be an awesome one.
Yeah, let's see if we can find ones that want to go head to head on this. All right.
Thanks again, Alex.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Alex. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye.